Hey, friends out there, this is Thursday, October 7th, 2021, and it is just about 5 minutes past 7, or rather 6 in the morning here in Northern California. And as usual, I'll discuss a few different things today. And I'm going to try to be brief. You know, anybody that's listened to me before knows I like to talk about God because God is kind of everything. God is the entity responsible for our very existence as human beings. God is like the master artist, sculptor, architect, engineer, scientist, you name it. And God is that all wrapped up in one, as we can clearly see through overwhelming empirical evidence and just being rational, logical, reasonable. We can say, yes, there is an entity that's responsible. That entity is referred to as God. And we can know certain things definitively about this God. And a little child would agree, well, that would make sense, that this God is at least as good as the best human parent, as kind and nice and gentle and compassionate and loving and comforting and encouraging, as every parent, every good parent considers themselves toward their child. They want the best for them. There is no possible ulterior motive for a parent. I mean, you really got to be sick, and we got to agree that God is not sick, that somehow everything makes sense, but only from his point of view. And that's the difficult part for us as humans to understand. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance in the world, and we're all involved in it to some degree. This is like willful self-deception, self-delusion, and it's something almost as a defensive mechanism we engage in. But it's easy for humans to do. It's our very human nature. It's our sinful nature. Inevitably there's a gnarly schism. Okay, we're dealing with a lot. We're all under a great deal of duress. And we need to treat each other the way we want to be treated, hence the golden rule. How Jesus could wrap up the entire Bible in just that knowledge. Just look, treat others the way you want to be treated. Love one another like you love yourself. Okay, and all will be well. We will, by default position, follow the laws of man, at least all the ones that make sense. It just happens. And all the 10 Commandments and everything else will all fall into place if we're just being honest. Like a little kid can understand honesty. They know the difference between a lie and the truth. And if we're just doing that, but that alone is very tough. We're also screwed up inherently. Okay, not to mention our upbringing from birth into this paradigm, this so-called reality, this malevolent reality that's been shoved down our throats, where we're told, no, you humans are somehow, you don't get the same privileges and rights as all the other creatures on the face of the earth who are not born with this thing we euphemistically refer to as a cost of living. After all, nothing is free. But what does that mean to any other creature except us? You see, we're trained from a very early age, from birth. And our parents are under that same spell, mesmerized by the world system. And it's like a beast. It's a behemoth. It's like overwhelming. It's nuts. Okay, that's the world we live in, is nuts. The reason is because the people at the uppermost echelons are nuts. Okay, so the best we could do is just try to be nicer and nicer and nicer to each other, understanding the difficulties of simply being human and coping and contending with all the sundry madness we have to engage in. And I'm talking about a wide array of stuff. Both organically, we got to deal with as humans, and inorganically. That's the invented stuff. That's the stuff like money, that no other creature is under that yoke. They don't have to contend with that crap. They don't have to deal with it. And when you look, if you're just being honest, you look through history and look at all the homicides, all the dubious warfare, all the various rebellions, okay, and you see the tie all of this has, all that horrific goings on had with money, and you don't want to be defending it on Judgment Day, on the day of reckoning, because we don't belong to ourselves. Okay, everything you have, including your body, is all under loan. It's all usership. None of us are self-made. How do you know how to make a brain? You show me you make a human brain from scratch, no DNA, from scratch, because all the minerals exist. It's mostly water. That's what we're mostly composed of, right? Comprised of, whatever you want to call it. So you show me that, and then I'll be an atheist. Then I'll say, okay, it's possible that everything's a quirk. It's just happenstance that all creation came to be. Other than that, there's a God, and we have to establish certain fundamental truths about that God. Is God an a-hole? I strongly suggest no, of course not. Is a good parent an a-hole? Is a good parent stupid, naive, an idiot, a fool? No, they're not. Okay? So we've got to understand that this is the one to turn to, this entity we refer to as God, for all the solutions. There's just some stuff humans cannot, as much as we know there's all these therapists and counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists and pastors and all sorts of sundry other people, friends and family, all great people to hash things out with. But at the end of the day, we know we're on our own. Just like we came into this world, a singularity, just this individual entity known as a human being, we know we exit this place alone. Okay? And, you know, we ought to consider greatly how we live our lives in the interim, you know? And we have to give account. And one thing I don't want to be found doing on Judgment Day is trying to defend things that are indefensible. And money, it's spelled out. I mean, you got to know certain things about God. Again, you got to know that he's not stupid. Okay, we got to understand the profound power of this entity known as money, how it's a rival to God's will being accomplished on earth. It's an adversary, it's a nemesis, it's an enemy. It's a competing, literally like a competing God. Okay? And you can't serve two masters. You know, we got to understand fundamentally that we have to ready our own hearts and minds for the world of tomorrow. If you want to be in a better world, if you simply love life like I do, and you say, well, screw it, man, it says here that I can live forever in the scriptures. And I choose to believe that, because I choose to believe that God is all powerful. And when I look around me at the astounding creation and I go, oh my God, all the flora, all the fauna, I just love it all. I tell you, you know, I watch this one show sometimes. It's all about pets doing stupid, silly things, cute things. I mean, they're so cute. Who doesn't love puppy dogs and kitty cats, etc.? Even the birds. I mean, animals, especially the baby ones, are all so freaking adorable. You think that's by mistake that we were built with the ability to appreciate that and to value that adorableness, that cuteness? No, that was a grant, a gift we were imbued with. God's a giver of all only good things, responsible for all only good things. Okay? The enemy of our soul is responsible for everything else. All the negativity that's not organic out there. And the organic stuff is wide and varied. From biting insects and biting snakes and other predators out there. There's a whole host of those. Okay? And inclement weather, natural disasters, diseases of every sort, death, first and foremost, death. Thorns on roses, the sun is too bright, it's too dark, you name it. That's all organic. And the way to identify organic from inorganic is it's across the board. We all have to deal with it. But the inorganic, the invented artificial stuff is invented by those evil men I refer to at the uppermost echelons of power. And we could inject the term Satan in there. I mean, if you look at the definition of evil and you say, okay, that's the exemplar, that's the prototype, the archetype, The epitome, agree. Yes. So we're being infected on a local level. You see, these people want us to think that our problems have something to do with what they suggest. You're red and blue, you're Democrat and Republican, you're conservative and liberal, you're socialist and capitalist, and you can never get along, and that's on a community level. Sorry, but the smart guys got on the bandwagon, they snapped up all the housing, and even though it's an essential human need and we spend $50 billion a year on it, we're going to tolerate all this homelessness while we spend $100,000 a year on child molesters and murderers and thieves out there, criminals in the jails safely ensconced behind bars with 3 hots and a cot, paying their rent and their utilities and their medical and help reintegrating and all this. We're willing as a society to pay 100 grand a year per inmate for that. But no soup for you if you're just docile and passive. And don't you know the squeaky wheel gets the grease, man? Nothing's free. You can't be lazy. You can't drink alcohol. You can't use drugs. You can't. You got to get with it, man. It's your fault. I mean, don't act like a defective so and so. Something's wrong with you. Immorally, you got to get it together. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's the message